Welcome back. I'm working on puzzles once again. In this one, I do not have any immediate checks. However, it looks like a bunch of exchanges are about to happen. These two bishops are looking at each other. These two rooks will see each other as soon as my light squared bishop moves. And I'm thinking that that might be the best move here. My reasoning is this. If I do anything else, for example, if I initiate this trade, say bishop, I take my dark squared bishop and capture on b4. The opponent can capture back with either the knight or the queen, and then this pawn is undefended. And if I do something like capture here, they capture back, and it's just even exchanges. And then if I take the rook, they take the rook, it's an even exchange. So that's what happens. If I go there, I think we just end up with even exchanges and possibly also me losing this pawn at the end of the sequence. Also, if they take back with the queen, no, never mind. But I can't capture anything with this or this right now, or these other pieces. My bishops are the only two pieces that can capture right now. And I think if I capture with this bishop first, I don't think it matters what black does to respond, because they have at least 3-4 possible okay responses to that. But I think I come out ahead on the exchanges. For example, if I capture the knight on c6, it opens up the a file and the rooks see each other. Also, my bishop is then pointed at that rook, kind of threatening it. Okay, they can capture back with the queen or the bishop, and whichever one of those they capture back with, I have this check, which forces them to capture back, which they can do with whichever piece they captured my bishop with, this way. Then I can take this bishop. So that will be a bishop for a knight, my first move. Then rook for a rook on the second thing, and then I take the bishop. Now, if they captured that knight with their bishop, they can capture back here with their queen. I mean, you know what I'm saying? If they captured my bishop on c6 with their bishop, their queen is still available to guard b4. So when I take there, then that so far is all even exchanges, and my pawn is still hanging, but their bishop's down there. So I can then put my queen over here, aiming at that bishop and guarding this pawn at the same time. But they don't have to capture back when I do that. Other choices that they have are capturing my bishop or my rook first. Now, if they did either one of those, I think I would wait just a second, leave those pieces where they are, take this bishop with check, and then once they captured that bishop, I would take back whichever piece they had captured with down here. If they had taken my rook, I would retake. If they had taken my bishop, I would retake here. And I would have picked up an extra piece. And if they take back with the queen, I can capture with check here. They have to capture back, and then I get the bishop here for free, or basically. So I would be up a piece in that way. The only way that this works that I don't see myself coming up a piece is if they capture back with their bishop here. Then I'm not exactly sure what my next move should be at that point. I think it should be the rook. I would take the rook, like I said, first with check. Then their bishop would capture back, I assume. Then I would take this bishop, and they would capture back. And I would put my queen over here, attacking their bishop and protecting this pawn. But I don't know if that's right or not. I just got to do it because of the time that I've already spent on it. So I'm going to take it and then find out why it's wrong, if it's wrong. Okay, that was correct. And they did take back with the bishop, which I had determined was their best move, because that leaves their bishop guarding their rook and their queen guarding their bishop. Now my most forcing move here is check, which is a rook for a rook. And then this is a bishop for a bishop. And we're still even on material. And is moving the queen over then the best move? Or, I just thought of this. If I take their rook now, and they take back, with their bishop, which I assume they would, no, I was going to say I have a check here, but then they could just bring that bishop back to block the check. So that wouldn't be great. So take the bishop first, maybe? And then they capture back with their queen. We're still even. Then I take the rook, and they capture back. Oh man, I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I certainly don't want to check now. That's bad. So I think it's got to be rook for rook. So if I do anything else, like if I capture the bishop now, they can just take the rook now, and I don't have a. I mean, then I would take back, and then they would take back, and then what? Not in great shape. Is there something to do with these knights? That doesn't really threaten anything. That threatens a pawn, but not really, because they could just either castle out of that or move a rook over. So I'm thinking these knights are just here for decoration right now. Yeah, because if I do something like this, that just wastes a move. They just move the rook over or castle if they still can legally castle. And, or for that matter, they could ignore it for a second and take either my rook or my bishop. And then if I did end up taking that pawn, they could move the rook onto the now semi-open file pointed at my king. So I think I take the rook. Let's find out. Okay, that was it. We're still even. Piece for piece so far. Okay, question. What if I put my queen here now? Wait. Just thought of something. This bishop is only protected by the queen. If I take the bishop and they take back, then I don't have much. But if I check first, which I had looked at earlier, if I check first, not sure why that arrow is that color. Okay, there we go. They have to block with either the queen, in which case we could trade queens, and then I get the bishop for free, this bishop. Or I assume what they would do is block with their light squared bishop, and then I take the bishop with my queen, and then I'm up a piece. Instead of doing this now, then we're just even. I check first. Okay, now I get this bishop, and if they want to trade queens, we can, but I'm a piece up at that point. Okay, I figured it out, and I'm in the 2020s. This is still not my high score. In the middle of my last video, I reached, I think, 21, 24, if I'm not mistaken. So I'm just close to that. I said the theme was fork or double attack. I guess I was double attacking there with my queen at the end. Vulnerable king? Maybe. Okay. Next. Oh, that puzzle was only rated 1500. And it took me 10 minutes. Okay. An endgame puzzle that looks very similar to an endgame puzzle I did recently. Okay, I'm playing with the black pieces. I'm a pawn ahead. That's the difference in our positions. But my rook is blocking my pawn's advance. And I'm in check. Okay, so how can I move out of check? I cannot move forward, or I cannot move left or right, because that's obviously on the same rank I'm being checked on. I also cannot move, let's put these in red. I cannot move these places because the king guards those two and the rook guards those two. So I also can't block or capture the checking piece. So my only choices are one of these. So that's G5, F5, or E5 are my three choices to move to. E, F, and G5. Which would be best? Not sure. I'm leaning a little bit toward G5 just because I think this rook might want to get behind my passed pawn. And if I go to G5, my king would be protecting that square. Whereas if I move to one of these, the rook can get behind my passed pawn. As far as being checked again, the rook can check me again on any of those three squares. I don't know if that would be their best move at that point. So I'm leaning toward G5 for that reason, but I can't. And then if it checks me again, then what? If they check me again, come back up here to try to get in, have their king be between me and the rook, maybe. But if I moved, say, to F5 and the rook did get behind my passed pawn, couldn't I just go there to threaten the rook? I couldn't do that from here. But if I went to F5 and if the rook did get behind my passed pawn, I think I would just go to G5 at that point, and it couldn't capture. But that tells me that I should have been on G5 in the first place. And again, from any of those three squares, I can be checked again. So I'm going to go to G5. That was not it. I've gone down to 2106, and that puzzle was only rated 1700. Let's retry. I only have two choices now. It wasn't that one, so it was to come toward the rook. No. Did I miss something? Oh. I did miss something. It wants to go there. And then just forward again. Okay, now it wants to come check here. Yeah, I missed that square. Okay, that's disappointing. Well, I mean, I can't go that way because of the king. Clearly, it wants to come check me again. So if I move my pawn forward and I get checked again, then I can go there. And their king can come closer, and I'll be in trouble. But I don't want to get in front of it, right? Should I move my rook out at this point? Get my rook out of the way? I don't know. Nope, that wasn't it. Was it to move the pawn? Oh, it was to move the pawn. So now I'm supposed to get in front of it because that's my only choice now. And then the king came forward, which is what I thought would happen. Now move my rook out. No, because when it checks me, I'm going to want my rook guarding this. So what are my choices? To come toward the rook? No. No. I got to click the hint button. I have no idea. Okay, your video didn't freeze. I froze. I was supposed to guess that. And that was the end of the puzzle. Sorry, I had to pause the video so I could express myself very clearly, but I'm a little upset that this is how the puzzle ends after all that. I'm going to click on the analysis tab here and see. The first move of the puzzle was that, which it says is a huge blunder for white, according to the analysis bar there on the left. Okay. And only one move. It's only a blunder if I go there. And for somehow I missed that, even though in the beginning I blocked off these squares and said, okay, so I have to move to these three. I made that mistake of not knowing, of not guessing that one. Okay, any of the other ones, the game is a draw. But if I go there, I have a huge advantage. Well, before I made the move, Stockfish right up there said it was like a 60-point advantage to make that move. But now it's like, oh, it's only an 8-point advantage if they check you again. Okay, which is what they did in the puzzle. They checked me again. And again, I only have a huge advantage if I go here. Any other way out of check ends up drawing or possibly losing the game. And that... Okay, so I go there. Stockfish is very confused. It keeps changing its mind. It was 50-something points. Now it's 7-point advantage. Okay. So now white's best move is rook to c5. Oh no, it's, yeah, see, Stockfish changed its mind again. Rook to c7, which is what it did in the puzzle. And I made the wrong move here. I thought I should get my rook out of the way because I got to advance the pawn. But that was way off. Okay. I have to move my pawn forward here. Is the only move that isn't forced to draw. But I don't know why. I mean, I know eventually one of the goals is to get the pawn to the end to promote. That's the whole reason having a pawn here is an advantage. But yeah, that's my second next move according to Stockfish, and that one it says we go back to drawn. I guess it's because they can check me, and I put the king in front of my pawn, and then I'm stuck. But I go here, which I eventually figured out, and then of course they white checked me, which I expected. That's the reason they came down here in the first place. Okay. And here I tried everything. Everything was wrong. Because my king only has one legal move, so I tried that first. Well, no, that's the only thing I can do here. So that's what I did. I got that one right. Okay. And then I fully expected to be checked again and was going to have to come back. Or the king to move forward. Well, what happened is... Yeah, Stockfish changed its mind again. Well, what happened is the king came over, as I thought it would. And now it's cutting off these squares. Not sure why it went there. I wonder why it didn't go here. Because if it had gone here and then I did anything else like that, that would have been mate. Right? Because the king here would have cut off all three of these squares for my king. And then what do? If I had moved my rook here, that would have been mate. But I guess if it had gone there, I could have checked. But it doesn't matter, because even though it went here, I still... My only move that doesn't lose is to put my rook here, it says. And that's where the puzzle ended. And I'm supposed to know, oh wow, this is a huge advantage. How? Because I promote after they take it? Because now I promote with jack. Okay. So let's say I did that. It says if they block, then I have a definite mating sequence. Oh, because I can come around it with the queen. Okay. But now we're in a queen and rook endgame, which I know gives the queen an advantage, but it's notoriously difficult to win for people at my level. I would have had to know to go to queen d1 after that. Okay, yeah. I might have to pause and use profanity again, because that... Oh, and the theme was simple. The theme of this puzzle says simple. Well, that's not simple at all. So, thumbs down to that. No way. I don't know what the theme should be. Complicated, probably. I'm this close to deleting this video because I'm so upset right now. I do have a check here, which also picks up the bishop. I also have this check, which might be better. I don't know. The bishop captures pawn. Would force the king here. Then I would have that check with my queen protected by my pawn, which would force the king there. And that's mate. There's a name for that one. What's it called? Oh, what's it called? When there's two of your own pieces and your king gets in there and a queen can go right here. Because the queen cuts off all of those squares. There's a name for that. I think that's it. What's the name of their? Okay, yeah. So one of you experts can tell me what the name of that checkmate is, because I've seen that in checkmate patterns you must know. Oh, and there's no theme for this puzzle. Oh well, I've already gone on too long. Another end game with exactly even material. Let's see. I have a check protected by my king. The king cannot go back to the 5th rank because of my rook. It would have to go here, and then moving my bishop down would be mate. Well, they would block, but then I would capture and it would be mate. I'm pretty sure that's it. That was 1878? Oh my goodness, that was a lot easier than that 1500 puzzle I just did. Allow me to try to get one more right here, so I end up with a higher rating than I started with. Okay. I have a couple of checks. This one is pretty foolhardy looking, because I think the king would just capture back. But I have this sneaky one right here, knight to f3 check, because I have noticed that this pawn is pinned by my queen. So the king would have to move over, and I would win the queen. However, if the answer to this puzzle is a forced mate, then winning the queen is the wrong answer. So I have to look first to make sure there's not some sort of checkmate in this puzzle. Make sure it's not a queen sacrifice, because if I did capture here and the king captured back, because it would be forced to, I would have a follow-up check with my rook. But I think the king could just go back into the corner, and there's nothing I could do about that. So I don't think that's it. I think it's this, and then winning the queen. That's what I'm going to try. All right. I forgot about the rook, but that was still the right move. Okay, that's embarrassing. I just completely didn't see that the rook could capture there. But it was still the right move to put the knight there. Okay. Well, I can win the queen. But should I win the rook first? Because the pawn is still pinned right now. So if I win the rook first, I come out... No. Yeah, because now I'm down. I just gave up a knight for nothing. We each have 2 rooks and a queen, but the opponent is up a piece right now. If I take the queen, and they take the rook with check, I have to get out of check. And then hope to... Well, I'll be up a queen at that point. But if I take the rook first, and they take my queen, when I take the queen back, that pawn's not pinned anymore, and I'll lose the rook and the queen. So I think I have to take the queen first. Okay, well that is a new record, but... what would have happened there? Okay, yeah. White has a huge advantage until they played that, and then black has a huge advantage. And knight to f3 is the only move that takes advantage of that. So I did that, and the computer saw this, because, of course, I didn't see that. Now the only move that doesn't lose for black is to take the queen, and that was the end of the puzzle. But then, of course, the rook's going to capture here, right? That's why the puzzle ended there, because it doesn't really matter. It turns out to not really matter which way I get out of check. King to g8 is fine, it says. In the best. King to g6 is okay, threatening the rook. King to e6 is fine, even though that would lose a pawn and save... Oh no, they wouldn't lose a pawn because I would take the rook then. Okay, that makes sense. Okay, well, I set a new record, even though I did get pretty frustrated at one point in this puzzle. But thank you for watching. If you stuck this far, I'm still working at this, even though almost every day I consider quitting chess.